All right, so this is a redo for my series finale Soul Leader impressions video. Of course, if you followed the link to this, obviously you know it's because there's a ton of static in that video. For some reason, when the file uploaded, it was just a lot of static. So I finally got some time, and I'm definitely gonna go through everything I went through in that video, so you don't have to worry about did I miss anything from that in this video or anything like that. I'll recap everything, but I'm gonna leave that video up because I'm just weird and OCD like that. So don't worry that it's still up. I just leave everything up. If I leave everything I put up just because I put it up, so I just leave it out there. But the reason that I decided to do an impressions video instead of a review for the series finale is because I felt that it was sort of too enclosed to review a final portion of a story when there's so much that led up to it. It would be kind of like when you play an old game, there's a lot to it that's nostalgia. Like when you see people do reviews for old video games, it's a lot. People have to be objective because if you're not, you just think about how much fun you had when you were like 12 and you first played the game or something like that. So you kind of have to have an impression of it, even though those are technically reviews. And of course, it's not impossible to do a review. I just feel like personally, when it's the series finale of something, it's better to, instead of just review this portion here and ignore everything else, it's good to, look at the entire work. Talk about the finale, and of course, let's talk about my experiences, with past, you know, chapters of the manga and the series, because I also saw that. And obviously, if you have any comments on it, just comment below favorite parts, favorite characters, least favorite parts, what you did or didn't like about the series, did or didn't like about the ending of the series, and all of that. Just put it right down there. But instead of a review, my impression of the final chapter of Soul Leader, um, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't what I expected it to be. I thought maybe there would be like a fight. I thought Corona maybe wouldn't be able to contain the Kishin, and the Kishin would pretty much absorb Corona, and then they would have sort of the final fight, and then basically defeat the Kishin and actually separate the Kishin and Corona finally, and then everything would be pretty much perfect, and they destroy the Kishin, save Corona, and he, since that's what they pretty much made him in America, since they don't actually specify, but he'd be able to join Maka and Soul and everybody else as a part of the team, and they'd all pretty much just be happy, and villains defeated, we save Corona in the end, and everything's happy. But sadly it didn't really work out that way. But I actually appreciate how it did end, because even though I was thinking of something else, obviously I didn't create the series, but how it ended, I really enjoyed it just because of the fact that it wasn't what I expected. And it doesn't always have to be that can't be happy ending to a story for it to be really well done. And actually, like while I was reading it, I actually thought it seems sort of like a cliffhanger, because the characters don't really know if the Gishin will ever break out of the darkness on the moon and pretty much come back, or if Corona can actually hold the Kishin there the whole time, which is pretty much the same thing. But they don't actually know. And also, Noah being separated into what I believe were the seven deadly sins, like when he trapped everyone in the book. Him still being alive, I thought was sort of a cliffhanger. But then I thought about it afterwards, and his servant, whose name I definitely can't remember, he's carrying him off, and he's pretty much just going to take care of the seven different forms, and they won't really be coherent enough to actually come back and be a villain. Not to mention the fact that they don't even have the Book of Evan anymore anyway, so he's not exactly powerful like he was when he originally came into the series as a villain, because the Book of Evan was his weapon, and that's how he became such a crucial part of Soul Leader, was because he had the book and he could do all these cool things. But now he's been split up into seven different pieces, and his servant, who pretty much lives to serve him, he's gonna take care of him. And I of course love the scene where he smiled and it was a W instead of a normal smile, and because you think it's gonna just flip, and it's like, nope, it's a W, which is silly. But it was it seemed like a cliffhanger type ending, but it's not, and I really appreciate that. And also something I appreciate, which I mentioned in my other video but of the last chapter, was that Maka's mother was who's talked about all the time, never was never put into the series. And I mentioned in that video that I wouldn't actually want her to be included in the final chapter because it's the final chapter, and it would kind of be it would sort of be cheap. I mean, I'm sure it would have been very well done, but at the same time, I just think she could have been in it for like an entire volume's worth of chapters or something like that instead of the very last chapter, and she's in 43 pages out of thousands of pages from this series, and she gets put in like the last 40 or something like that. So I'm glad that didn't actually happen, just because it had a sense of continuity to it, and it didn't just like throw in this character that we never got to see, even though we wanted to see her all the time. And I love when anime and manga do that, even though it's like, God, I wish I could see this portion, or I wish I could see what characters look like when they grow up and things like that. But they ended, and it's like obviously they had a life after the series, and who knows, maybe Maka does end up going to see her mother, and I'm sure she does, of course, at some point. But for a Soul Eater, we don't really get that, and I actually appreciate that for what it was. And the funniest thing to me in the chapter was the odd focus on boobs, which I thought was just silly. And when they actually first did it, I have this stupid eyelash in my eye, and it's just stabbing me. That's why I keep rubbing my eye. But when they first talked about like boobs, and Maka was hugging Marie, and she was just like, boobs, and she was like, no, it's like a weird sense from her soul. My initial thought was actually that Marie was the Kishin in disguise somehow, and that they actually would end up having this random fight, and I guess the Kishin, he'd reveal that it was him, and they'd fight and solve the problem. But that didn't end up happening, and it was that Marie was actually pregnant, and her and Stein are having a child now, and that's pretty cool. And I thought it was so funny because they could easily make a series about just Marie, Stein, and like Spirit trying to save the baby from Stein. Like, okay, you can't like dissect your own kid, I'll babysit for like a year or something silly. But like they're having a kid, and that's cool. Everyone had their own little portion in this, which I really enjoyed. Like we had them, they're having a kid. Then you have Maka and Soul towards the end, which of course I'll get to last. But we have Kid, who's taking over for his father. He's now Shinigami, a full Shinigami. And even though it was sad, everyone's sad that obviously Death died. He had to pass on for Death the Kid to become Death, and take over the school. And I really like that scene when they're doing the ceremony, and Spirit's putting the mask on him, and he looked uneasy. And at first I thought he looked that way because Spirit was obviously so close to Lord Death, because he was pretty much the only Death Scythe that was actually at the school in the beginning of the series. And so obviously with him being the only Death Scythe that stayed at the school, he had a closer connection to Death than anyone else. So I thought it was like, oh, he's upset, and they're showing everyone pretty much being sad and uneasy because they're going into sort of this huge transition between from Death to Death the Kid, even though technically he's just gonna be Death now. But it was actually that Kid was just like screwing up with his symmetry. He was freaking out about the mask being on straight, and had him redo the ceremony like a billion times. So that was really funny. I thought it seemed like it had an emotional impact, and then it was just actually really funny. But after that, or I think it was either before or after that, where I think it was before actually, where Blackstar is basically training of course Blackstar, and you see he has the scar on his face now, which would be weird. I guess it would be weird if he didn't, because his face kind of looked like it was getting chopped in half in like the last chapter, or I guess the chapter before that when they were actually fighting. But now he has two scars. So he has the one across his face from the Kishin, and the one on his arm from when he fought Mifune. So they're like two huge battles that help progress him as a character, even though we don't really get to see all the progression from obviously the Kishin battle because it was the end of the series, but he goes around the school and everyone's pretty much calling him a Bushin now because the Kishin called him that and said, like you're pretty much like a demigod or something like that. And so you can just imagine him going around talking about how he's so powerful that the Kishin even recognized him and stuff like that. And that was pretty cool. And he was like on stage and stuff and like flexing and people were calling him the Bushin and things. I thought that was really funny. And then, of course, we get the end, and Maka and Soul are, they're sitting down, they have their talk, and in the end, Maka, she says, let's show the world that, let's show the world this soul resonance, to basically say, let's show the Kishin and the world and Corona and everything that we stick together, that we're gonna fight no matter what to save the people and the things that we care about. And that last scene, you have Maka and she's just saying, this soul resonance, and she's pretty much looking right at us. And whenever I read the last page of a manga, which I've only really done for like a few things, I always I stare at the scene and I just think about everything that's led up to it, all the cool fights, all the funny moments, and all the dramatic moments. And I just realized like I really love this series. Like I said, I watched the anime. I loved it so much. I went straight to reading the manga, which I've never done before. I bought the anime, and like it, just a really cool series that even though the anime was of course different from the manga, like I love each individually. And actually, if for some reason you're watching this and you haven't read through or seen Soul Eater at all, I would actually suggest seeing the anime first and then reading the manga, because there's so much that changed. It actually makes it a whole new experience, because you think certain elements and then they're just completely different or not even in the actual manga, and they're actually some really great twists that come into the manga after you think what's going to happen because of certain things that happen in the anime. So if you haven't experienced Soul Eater, definitely watch the anime first and then go through the manga. And hopefully, which I'm sure pretty much everyone who loves the series hopes this, just like I do, I'm really hoping that we do get a new anime, just like how Full Metal Alchemist got one. Hopefully, we'll get a new anime and it'll go through, the entire series, which would be amazing, because I'd love to see some of the scenes in the manga in anime form, especially when they actually all get like the new costumes. Like I really love that, because it's like a whole new portion of the manga. They go through this huge fight, and then it's like, all right, time passes and everyone's pretty much in different clothing now, and then they go through that for a long portion, and then the very end of it, they all go back to their original outfits, which I thought that was really cool how they did that, except for Soul, which I always thought was so weird that like his basic uniform, which is him with the jacket, is really in the smallest portion of that entire, the manga and the anime, really. Like once he fights Corona, the jacket's just gone. But that's pretty much the cosplay that you'll see all the time, and it's such a small part of the anime and the manga that is so weird to me. And even when they go back to their original costumes, he still doesn't wear his original jacket. He wears like the black jacket with the orange t-shirt under it. And I always thought that was so weird, but that's just how it went. And it's not even a big deal. It's just something that caught my eye. I always thought, that's so weird. There's a bug right there. You can't see me move my hands. But I've always thought that was kind of interesting. And also, even though the show is obviously called Soul Eater, the main character is Soul Eater Evans, he doesn't seem to be as much of a main character as like any other anime where it'd be like Naruto. It's Naruto or Bleach. It's Ichigo. In Soul Eater, it seems like everyone's really, really even. And if anything, if I had to really pick one character, I'd say it was more Maka than anybody else. And then, Soul's like a really close second, but that's really just because Maka, is partnered with Soul. So I'd say it's more like Maka Auburn than it is Soul Eater. But, I just always thought that was a really cool thing about this show, because it could have been called pretty much anything, and not have been related to anyone's name in the series, and it actually would have been perfect. Like obviously, Maka and Soul are the two main people. That's why they're the first group, and the show is Soul Eater. But like I said, it is very balanced to me, where everyone does get their own episodes, and everyone has their own development in each episode. At least of the three main teams, and then the other side characters, get their moments here and there. But I always love that about the show, and the series in general, not just the anime. But overall, it was a great experience. Watching and reading the story. It's given us, like I said, it's given us the show. Obviously, a great manga. It's given us games. I don't know if any of the games came out in America. I'm sure at least one had to, but I know there's one on the Wii that's only in Japan. But games and toys and all types of stuff that we probably don't even have here, and some stuff that we do, of course. But overall, I love this show. I can't wait to officially hear that we will get an anime, and I'm like really hoping, like if they don't do that, that would be insane, because it is such a popular anime, like the regular one is, and obviously the series as a whole is really important, or really popular and important, I'd say. But hopefully we'll really get a new animation, and just get to see like 1080p Soul Eater, and that'll be great to see. And just hopefully hire back all the same voice actors for the English dub too, because the English dub, if you haven't watched it, because I know sub versus dub, but the English dub for Soul Eater is actually very well done. They have really good voice actors for that, so even if you like really hate dubs, it's one of the better anime that actually has a good dub cast. So you can check that out, obviously, which I mentioned before, and I don't know why anyone would be this far into the video if they haven't seen the series already. But if you are, definitely check out Soul Eater. Like I said, watch the anime first, then read the manga. I guarantee you'll love it. You'll find something to love about it, because it's just, there's something to love, period. So comment below, let me know what you thought of the finale, thought of the entire series. Like I mentioned in like the very beginning of the video, favorite moments, least favorite moments, favorite characters, least favorite characters, and definitely put what you thought the ending would be versus what it actually was. Are you satisfied with it? Are you upset that this didn't happen or that didn't happen? Like I read comments where some people said, how come Maka and Soul didn't really end up together? When I honestly thought that would be really weird if they did, because there was really no sort of connection like that in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that they live together, which when you really think about it is kind of weird. They don't ever actually talk about that. And even Blackstar and Tsubaki sort of live together. At least Blackstar is like at her house. They mentioned that in one part. I can't really remember the specifics, but like they live together too. So like everyone, all the teams kind of live together, but they don't ever actually talk about that. But just let me know what you thought of the series as a whole, this and that, and just everything Soul Eater. Comment below, let me know. Thanks for watching.